Okay, now you've learned about the upper course and the middle course of the river, we are now going to focus on the lower course of the river. If you look at this diagram, it compares a lot of features between the upper, middle and lower course of the river. If you look at the upper course in the far top left, you can see the majority of the erosion is vertical. That's vertical erosion, so it's coming downwards. And this is where the source is, and this is up in the hills or mountains. As you get to the middle course, where meanders start to form, you get lateral erosion, which is sideways. As we get down to the lower course today, it's almost reached sea level, so we're not so much as getting erosion, we're getting deposition, where all the material being carried is being dropped. And it is the lower course that we are going to be looking at today. The two landforms that we're going to look at today in the lower course of the river are firstly Oxbow Lakes, which form when meanders continue to erode, and the second landforms or set of landforms are floodplains and levees. First of all, let's look at Oxbow Lakes. If you look here, you can see an OS map of a river in Wales. If you follow the river from the top left to the bottom right, you can see that as it gets towards the bottom right, it starts to meander. The bottom right is more towards the lower course. How do we know that a floodplain is being formed here? Well, if we look at the contour lines, a complete absence of them around Capel Bangor and down towards the bottom right shows that the river is actually flat, and this is a floodplain, and we will be looking a little bit at what floodplains are and how they're formed in a moment. If we're going to look at Oxbow Lakes, we need to look a little bit at meanders. Now, we've already done that, and as you can see here, it's a diagram of how a meander's formed. The black shows erosion on the outside of the bend, and the blue shows deposition on the inside of the bend. Now, if you're looking down on this happening, you can quite easily see what's going to happen over time. It's going to be going from left to right, so the river's almost migrating to the right. The meander neck, which we'll look at in a moment, is getting narrower. This eventually will cut off. The next slide will show you what this looks like on a side profile. This might help to explain it a little bit better. From the side profile, you can see on the right side of the river, you've got erosion occurring, and on the left side of the river, you've got deposition. And you can see the fastest flow is causing erosion and causing this part of the river to migrate from the left to right, which is making the meander more sinuous, which in other words means more bendy. This diagram is from the textbook, and it's probably the most important one that you'll look at today whilst looking at Oxbow Lakes. I would suggest you have your own sketch of this to help you understand this. It starts off on the bottom left showing the meander and showing deposition and erosion, but it also shows the fastest flow, which is going around the outside of the bend, a bit like if you're in a sports car going as fast as you can around a bend in a car. Gravity pulls you towards the outside of that bend, and it does the same with the river. So the first two pictures, you can see the bends are where water is being forced, and that is causing erosion. Now, if you look at the third picture, you can see that the bends have become too much, that erosion actually cuts through the neck of the meander. The neck is the bit that's narrowed. Then what you get is the river eroding through the gap and causing a new channel. And on the far right, you've got that new channel being formed. Now, water is efficient, or another word for that is lazy. It's not going to go around a bend unnecessarily. So if it can, it's just going to flow straight. Much less effort. And if you look at that bottom right picture, you can see with continued deposition, a new channel is formed and we have a cut-off. That's another name. Or an Oxbow Lake. So if you do an exam question and it says, how is an oxbow lake formed, or draw a diagram of a feature of a meander's development, you can do something like we've got at the bottom here, showing this development. Okay, by now we should be oxbow lake experts. We're now going to look at the second set of landforms from the lower course of a river, and these are floodplains and levees. And if you remember from the OS map just now, the floodplain was the very flat area which was completely white with no contours. Let's have a look at this. Okay, I've already said that the floodplain is this flat area of land either side of the river, which you get in the lower course of a river. You also get it in the middle course, but when we look at case studies and we're answering exam questions, it's really best to sort of stick to the lower course for floodplains and oxbow lakes. Meanders occur in the lower course as well, but to make it simple, meanders hook that up to the middle course, and in the lower course you can talk about the development of the oxbow lake. Now, my suggestion is you pause this and have a read through and put some of this writing, which I've taken from the textbook, into your own words. You can look in the textbook and you can find what figure 21 looks like in your own time. Okay, here we can see a diagram pulling all of our lower course landforms together. You've got your meander, you've got your oxbow lake being formed. But you can also see this very flat floodplain area. If you look at the bottom, you've got this lined sort of alluvial deposit. So alluvium is actually the name of any sediment put down by a river. And you've also got either side of this flat channel these things called bluffs. And this is another word for this is the terraces. And you actually get this forming quite naturally where the floodplain has formed and sort of eroded out sort of a channel and left the hills either side. Okay, another diagram from the textbook. So this is perfect, the Edexcel textbook, because if you're going to answer an exam question and it says describe and explain how a floodplain forms or how floodplains and levees form, you get the opportunity to draw a diagram, and this is pretty much the diagram. Now, what happens if you look at the top picture is you've got your river channel, and in the second picture you can see the river floods. Now, as soon as the river floods out of its channel, it deposits the heaviest or the biggest material first, because as soon as it sort of loses a bit of energy, as it does in the second picture, it's going to drop the heaviest first rather than the lightest. So what we get either side of that river channel in the second diagram is these sort of dark mounds, and these are called levees. And if you look in the second diagram, you can see these after the flood. Now, one of the things these levees do is they offer natural protection to a river. In the Mississippi River, you've got levees built artificially, but they do actually form naturally. And you can see in this bottom picture, the sides of the river, because of these levees, actually become higher, which for future floods means the river doesn't flood out because it's kept in by higher sides of the river. Some of the key words from the key is coarse sediments and finer sediments. Coarse means bigger sediments like gravel, and finer sediments are things like clay. So you can imagine in that second picture, as soon as the flood water comes out of the channel, it deposits the coarsest material first. So, Geography Monkey here just wants to assure you that you will remember these points. The key words for the lower course of the river, got 4 of them. First 2, meander neck, which is the bit that narrows, and the oxbow lake. Thank you, Geography Monkey. And the second 2 words are the floodplain and the levees, which are formed either side of the river channel in the lower course. Thank you very much, Geography Monkey. So, what do you do now? Well, you may still be struggling to visualize what's actually happening here. So, I've put 2 video links on here, YouTube links for you to type in and have a look at. Very, very short videos. One shows you how an oxbow lake is formed, and one shows you how a floodplain is formed. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this flipped learning lesson.